The smell of wet earth always reminded Marcus Thorne of his grandfather. Mornings when the sun came slow and golden over the fields, when land still felt like it belonged to people instead of paper contracts. This morning, though, the smell wasn't comforting. It was sharp, acrid, wrong, carried on a wind that turned his stomach before he even stepped off the porch. 2 acres of home lay spread before him. The same land where his kids scattered feed to the chickens at dawn and his wife, Elena, coaxed herbs from stubborn Texas soil. A place that had never needed defending, until now. Marcus set down his coffee and walked barefoot through dew-soaked grass. The yard felt different. The silence didn't sound like peace anymore. It sounded like someone holding their breath. When he reached the coop, the hens clucked nervously, their sharp little eyes reflecting something Marcus knew too well from his 25 years enforcing municipal codes. The look of things about to go wrong. A white Lexus idled at the end of his gravel drive. The engine purred smooth as silk, too clean for country roads. A woman stepped out, platinum blonde hair, posture like she'd never once doubted the world would part for her when she walked. She smiled like real estate agents do in brochures, warm and professional, a perfect mask for ambition. "Mr. Thorne," she called, voice bright as glass under a diamond wheel. "I'm Brenda Kensington, HOA president for Willowbrook Estates. We really should talk about getting you on board with the community standards." Marcus didn't move closer. He didn't need to. The Lexus, the tone, the timing told him everything. He'd seen this dance before. Newcomer with expensive taste decides the neighborhood's soul needs sanding smooth. Only this time, they'd picked the wrong target. "I've lived here 15 years, Marcus said evenly. "This property's older than the subdivision, and older than your HOA. Brenda's smile thinned, just enough to notice. "Rules are rules," she replied, though her voice softened like she thought it could charm its way through stone. "Chickens, workshops, all that clutter, it really hurts property values. I brought you an application." She held out the paper, as if it were a wedding invitation. Marcus didn't take it. "You see that porch?" Marcus gestured toward the house where Elena was waving from the doorway, her dark hair loose in the wind. "I rebuilt it with my own hands. You see that coop? My twins feed those birds every morning before school. You see this land? I wrote the codes that keep it legal." The words landed flat between them, and Brenda blinked once, recalculating. "Well," she said finally, letting her hand fall, "I'm sure we'll find a way to work together." Willowbrook is a close-knit neighborhood. She drove away slow, tires whispering over gravel, the kind of retreat that wasn't really a retreat at all. Marcus watched until the Lexus disappeared past the mailbox. Only then did he notice the envelope she'd slipped under the flag. A certified letter already waiting with the kind of precision that didn't come from chance. Inside, Elena read it aloud at the kitchen table, her fingers tightening on the paper. Community standards violation. Unpermitted agricultural activities. Immediate corrective action required. "Unpermitted," Marcus muttered, laughing once without humor. "I permitted this property myself. I literally drafted the grandfather clause she's citing." Elena glanced at him, concern shadowing her usual calm. "You think she's just being pushy, or she's testing us?" Marcus said, staring out the window at the road where Brenda's car had vanished. "And if she doesn't like the answer, she'll push harder." He didn't know how much harder yet. He didn't know that the next 6 months would turn his quiet homestead into the center of a storm, that his family's porch, his children's laughter, his wife's garden, would all become battleground markers in a war he hadn't asked for. But Marcus Thorne knew something Brenda Kensington didn't. Rules were his home turf, and when people tried to break them, he had a very particular way of fighting back. This time, though, it wouldn't just be a fight over chickens. It would be a fight for everything. Marcus laid them out on the kitchen table while Elena poured coffee. Their twins, Dakota and River, were upstairs getting ready for school, music thumping faintly through the ceiling. The photos were ordinary enough. The chicken coop, the workshop door, even the herb beds where Elena had been clipping rosemary the day before. But the angle was wrong. These weren't aerial shots or random neighborly snaps. Someone had been standing on their property line, close enough to smell the basil and hear the hinges creak. She's not just filing complaints, Marcus said, tapping one of the pictures with his finger. She's documenting us. Elena's voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. Marcus, we've dealt with petty neighbors before. This feels different. Different didn't begin to cover it. By week 3, Marcus was walking into work to find his own name on half the city's code violation desk. Unpermitted structures, noise complaints, improper waste disposal. 17 reports in a single week, all written with the same careful penmanship, all bearing the same Willowbrook Estates return address. His supervisor, Dave, cornered him in the hallway. "Marcus, what the hell is going on out there?" "She's testing boundaries," Marcus answered, keeping his voice low. "She thinks she can bury me in paperwork." Dave raised an eyebrow. "You gonna play nice?" Marcus allowed himself a small, humorless smile. "You know me better than that." But this wasn't just professional anymore. It was personal. The twins came home one afternoon quieter than usual, dropping backpacks by the door without a word. Dakota fiddled with the hem of her hoodie while River avoided eye contact. "Everything okay at school?" Marcus asked carefully. Dakota shrugged. "People are saying stuff. About the chickens. About you." "Like what?" Elena asked gently, sitting beside them. "That you're in trouble with the city. That our house is going to get condemned." River's voice cracked at the end, the bravado of 14 barely covering real fear. Marcus felt a cold anger settle in his chest, heavier than rage, sharper than frustration. "Listen to me," he said, crouching so he was eye level with his kids. "Our home is safe. Nobody's taking anything from us. Understand?" They nodded, but their faces told him they weren't convinced. That night, Marcus sat alone in his workshop, lights dimmed, legal binders spread open on the scarred workbench. He traced sections of the municipal code with a fingertip, the same laws he'd helped draft to protect properties like his. Section 1.2.3.7, Agricultural Grandfather Clauses. Section 1.4.9.2, False Reporting Penalties. "You picked the wrong family, Brenda," he thought, writing dates and times in a neat column. "I've put bigger bullies than you in handcuffs." But Brenda wasn't acting like a lone bully. She was organized. Every complaint hit at 8:47 a.m. sharp. Every accusation mirrored the last, like someone had built a script. Even the neighborhood had begun to shift. Morning walkers pausing to take photos of the coop, strangers idling in unfamiliar cars at the edge of their driveway. Elena noticed first. "Have you seen how many people just happen to be out there lately?" she whispered one evening, closing the curtains against the dusk. This isn't normal. It wasn't paranoia. It was pressure. Brenda had formed a so-called neighborhood safety committee, plastering flyers across mailboxes, concerned about unregulated agricultural chemicals. "Help us protect Willowbrook's families." The stock photos of smiling kids made Marcus's stomach turn. The campaign worked. Parents began crossing the street rather than wave hello. A teacher asked Elena during lunch duty if the rumors were true. Even Dakota's best friend stopped coming over after her parents decided the coop was unsanitary. The silence at the bus stop hurt worse than the letters. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't pound on Brenda's door. He did what he'd always done, documented everything. Every letter, every false report, every whisper of harassment. If Brenda wanted a war of paperwork, she'd pick the wrong opponent. And yet, even Marcus, the man who'd spent decades sniffing out scams and slumlords, couldn't shake a creeping unease. This wasn't just about chickens or property lines. It felt coordinated, professional, like Brenda had done this before. Late one night, after Elena had gone to bed, Marcus found himself staring at an open browser window. Public records, property transfers, obscure real estate filings. A pattern started to emerge. Neighborhoods where Brenda had lived before, homes that refused HOA membership, and properties that somehow changed hands under unfortunate circumstances. Marcus pushed back from his desk, heart pounding. "This isn't a neighbor problem," he murmured to the empty workshop. "This is a business model." The next morning, when the third certified letter arrived, immediate action required. Final warning. Marcus didn't crumple it up. He smiled, slow and dangerous. "All right, Brenda," he whispered, Let's see how you handle someone who actually knows the rules. Marcus had walked this path every morning for 15 years. Past the porch swing, through the dew-dark grass, down to the chicken coop where Dakota and River fed their flock before school. But today the air carried something bitter, chemical, sharp enough to make his eyes sting. The hens were silent. He unlatched the coop door and felt his stomach drop. Justice, liberty, freedom, and hope. The birds his twins had named with more optimism than he felt now. Lay still on the straw, eyes glazed, beaks slack. A cracked water dish smelled faintly of antifreeze. Elena found him kneeling there minutes later, holding an empty feed scoop like it was evidence. "Marcus!" Her voice trembled. What happened? He couldn't answer at first. Couldn't make himself say it. When Dakota's footsteps pounded up behind them, he rose fast, blocking the doorway with his body. "Go inside," he said, voice rougher than he intended. "Right now." "Dad, what's wrong with inside?" "Now." Dakota froze, then obeyed, silent tears starting down her face. River followed without a word. Elena stayed, her hand gripping Marcus's arm hard enough to hurt. "This isn't a complaint anymore," she whispered. "This is a message." Marcus's mind ran cold and methodical, the way it had during fire investigations and crime scenes. Whoever did this wasn't just cruel, they were careful. The latch wasn't broken. No sign of forced entry. Someone had walked onto his property like they belonged there, knowing exactly what to do and when. He checked the security camera by the coop. Grainy footage, low light, but there it was. A shadowed figure slipping through the fence at 3:07 a.m. Gloved hands, deliberate movements. The shape was too small for an adult, too nervous in its posture. By noon, Marcus had a license plate number. By evening, he was standing in a cracked driveway across town, staring at a terrified 16-year-old boy who confessed everything between sobs. She paid me $200, the kid stammered, eyes red. "Said it was just to scare you. Some lady from your neighborhood. Blonde. Fancy car. She gave me the paint, too." "Paint?" Marcus's blood ran colder. When he got home, the workshop door confirmed it. Angry red spray, paint spelling move in dripping letters. Elena met his eyes as he stepped inside, evidence photos clutched in his hand. "This isn't just harassment anymore," she said. "No," Marcus agreed. "This is organized." The realization landed heavier than anger. He'd seen homeowners bullied, yes, but not like this. Not coordinated vandalism, not kids being used as pawns, not threats that bled into his children's lives. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table surrounded by binders, photographs, and coffee cooling in its mug. Patterns emerged in the paperwork like bloodstains under UV light. Neighborhoods Brenda had left behind, properties that mysteriously changed hands, shell companies tied to her real estate license. Elena joined him around 2 a.m., hair pulled back, eyes tired but fierce. "What are you thinking?" she asked. Marcus tapped a page showing 3 Phoenix properties condemned after unexplained accidents. "I'm thinking Brenda Kensington isn't just power tripping. I'm thinking she's running a business, and we're next on our list." Elena studied him. "And what are you going to do about it?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "What I always do, build a case." But even as he said it, doubt gnawed at the edges of his calm. This wasn't a normal code violation dispute. This was chess played in the dark, and Brenda wasn't afraid to use pawns she could throw away. The next morning brought proof. Marcus walked into work and found his supervisor waiting with an envelope. "Formal complaint against you," Dave said grimly. "Abuse of position, intimidating citizens, using city resources for personal vendettas. Internal Affairs is opening an investigation." Marcus opened the folder. The timestamps were precise. The accusations were professional. Brenda had turned his own vigilance into a weapon. Dave sighed. "Marcus, I know this isn't you, but I have to pull you off field duty while this clears." The words hit harder than he expected. For the first time in 25 years, Marcus Thorne wasn't the man enforcing the rules. He was the man under suspicion. That evening, as Elena closed the curtains against unfamiliar cars creeping by, Marcus stared out at the fading sunset and felt something new. Not anger, not fear exactly. A cold certainty. Brenda Kensington wasn't just trying to control his property. She was trying to destroy his life. And if she thought he'd fold, she had no idea what kind of man she'd just cornered. Elena stirred first, tense even before she was fully awake. The twins slept through it upstairs, but Marcus was already moving, his hand closing around the baseball bat he kept by the bed. By the time he reached the porch, the sound of retreating tires was fading down the road. On the front steps sat a single envelope, no return address. Inside, a photograph, their family sitting on the porch at dinner, unaware of the camera. Scrawled across it in red marker. Accidents happen. Elena found him staring at it in the kitchen light, jaw tight, hands trembling in a way Marcus hadn't felt since his early days doing fire inspections on fatal sites. "Marcus, what is this?" "It's proof," he said flatly. She's not bluffing. Within 48 hours, the harassment moved from intimidation to siege. Anonymous calls flooded the city office, painting Marcus as a corrupt official. Social media posts labeled their home unsafe for children. Parents pulled their kids from playdates with Dakota and River. Even Elena's colleagues at school whispered questions she couldn't answer. The isolation hurt worse than the threats. But Marcus kept moving. Nights became war room sessions in the workshop, binders and photographs covering every surface, maps with colored pins showing Brenda's old neighborhoods. Phoenix, Tucson, San Diego, places where problem properties mysteriously burned or flooded, only to be sold cheap. "This isn't about property lines," Marcus told Elena one evening, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "It's organized theft. Brenda builds pressure, forces holdouts to sell, flips the land through shell companies. She's done this before, and I can prove it." Elena touched his arm. "And what if you're right? What if proving it makes her come after us harder?" He hesitated. For the first time in his career, Marcus felt the rules bending under his feet. The law had always been his shield. Now it felt like thin glass. The next blow came at work. Internal Affairs called him in for questioning. 3 hours under fluorescent lights. Every case decision scrutinized. Every timestamp on his computer treated as evidence. By the time he left, Marcus was reassigned to desk duty. For 25 years, he'd enforced the rules. Now Brenda had painted him as the villain. That night, Elena found him on the porch staring at the road. "You okay?" she asked softly. Marcus didn't answer right away. He'd heard the distant hum of cars slowing at their driveway too many times, seen the way the twins flinched at every unknown knock. Fear was leaking into their lives like smoke through old floorboards. "I spent my whole career teaching people the law works if you follow it," he said finally. "But what if the people breaking it are the ones writing it?" Elena reached for his hand. "Then you don't just follow the law," she said. "You use it." It was exactly what he needed to hear. Marcus started calling in favors. An investigative reporter friend from college, a property rights attorney Elena knew from law school, a forensic accountant with a nose for dirty money. His quiet workshop became a command center. Financial trails pinned to corkboards, timelines linked with red string, photos and legal documents sorted into boxes labeled criminal, civil, and media. Still, Brenda stayed one step ahead. Anonymous cars prowled the street at night. A police cruiser appeared at their door, responding to a false 911 call. Domestic disturbance, even though Marcus and Elena had been eating dinner on the porch. The responding officer, an old colleague, looked furious but helpless. "Marcus, whoever's doing this is playing for keeps," he warned. "File everything. Don't take chances." Then came the final straw. Early Saturday morning, Marcus found diesel-soaked rags stuffed into the storm drain near his gas line. Placed there deliberately, the kind of setup designed to look like an accidental fire. He didn't wake Elena immediately. He walked the property alone, dawn breaking gold on the horizon, birds just starting to sing. The land felt different now, like it was holding its breath. When Elena joined him on the porch an hour later, he showed her the evidence in a plastic bag. Her face went pale. "This isn't just harassment," Marcus said quietly. "This is attempted arson. And if they're willing to do this," he trailed off, glancing up at the twins' bedroom window. Elena's voice was steady, but her hand gripped his arm hard. "Then we don't wait for them to make the next move." Marcus nodded. "Time to take the gloves off." The law was still his shield, but now it was also his sword. From the abandoned barn across the creek, Marcus adjusted the night vision lens on his camera and whispered into the mic clipped to his collar. Visuals clear. Hold position. Beside him, Jake, the investigative reporter who owed Marcus more than one favor. Check the backup recorder. You sure about this? Marcus didn't answer. The only thing louder than the steady hum of the recording equipment was his own heartbeat. Elena and the twins were safe, hidden at her sister's house with a cover story about a weekend getaway. But the hollow ache of their absence pressed hard against his ribs. At 2:11 a.m., headlights flashed once on the distant road and then disappeared. A rental truck rolled to a stop 2 blocks away. 2 men in dark clothing climbed out, faces half hidden, moving with a practiced efficiency Marcus recognized instantly. Not vandals, professionals. They carried gasoline cans and something worse. Timing devices wired to look like faulty surge protectors. Marcus's camera captured every detail in crisp infrared. The way they traced the property line, the way they poured accelerant at each corner of the house and around the gas meter, the way they worked in silence. Jake's voice was low, steady. We've got them. All of it. You want to call this in? Not yet, Marcus said. His own voice sounded foreign, colder than he expected. We need them finishing the setup. Otherwise, it's my word against theirs. For 47 unbearable minutes, Marcus watched strangers map his family's life for destruction. The workshop where he'd built Dakota's treehouse, the porch where Elena read to the twins on summer evenings. Every corner became a target. The acrid scent of gasoline drifted even across the creek, sharp as betrayal. When the men finally slipped back toward the truck, Marcus dialed a direct line. Rodriguez, he whispered, we've got an arson in progress. Dispatch units to Willowbrook Drive. Quiet approach. I'll send coordinates. 8 minutes. That was the fire department's response time. Long enough for the arsonist to vanish, short enough to stop ignition. Marcus adjusted the camera for one last shot. License plate, physical description, faces turning toward each other under the glow of a phone screen. Perfect. At 3:05 a.m., flashing lights washed the street. The men were gone, but the evidence wasn't. Accelerants, timers, prints. Fire Marshal Rodriguez took one look and shook his head. Professional job. Someone paid serious money for this. By dawn, state police had the rental truck. By breakfast, they had the arsonists in handcuffs. And by noon, they had something better, a trail of cash wire from a Shell account tied directly to Brenda Kensington. But Marcus wasn't finished. That evening, Brenda confronted him in the parking lot of the Willowbrook clubhouse, her perfect composure fraying under pressure. You think you're clever? She hissed, too angry to notice Jake's phone filming everything from 10 feet away. Sometimes old houses just catch fire. The words hung in the air like gasoline vapor. Thanks for saying that on camera, Marcus replied evenly. You just saved me a subpoena. The takedown was fast, almost anticlimactic. State troopers intercepted Brenda at the interstate on-ramp, her Lexus packed with suitcases and a laptop full of property valuations. HOA records she'd claimed were stolen in a staged burglary, and messages to the very men who'd tried to torch Marcus's home. When they cuffed her, Marcus wasn't there to gloat. He stood instead on his front porch, staring at the scorched patches of earth where accelerant had soaked into the soil. His house was intact, but the smell of smoke lingered in his mind. Elena returned with the twins at sunset. Dakota ran to the coop first, finding it empty but clean, a new padlock on the door. River stood beside his father, unusually quiet. Is it over? The boy asked. Marcus looked down at him, then back toward the flashing lights still visible on the far road. No, he said softly, but we just turned the tables. In the fading light, Jake's voice carried from the driveway. The feds are on their way. This isn't just harassment anymore. This is interstate conspiracy. Marcus tightened his grip on the evidence binder in his hand. For months, Brenda had tried to turn fear into a weapon. Tonight, fear had changed sides. The courthouse steps were crowded, humming with cameras and voices, but Marcus barely heard any of it. What he noticed instead was Elena's hand gripping his, steady as ever, and the twins walking a little taller than they had 6 months ago. Inside, the case unfolded with surgical precision. The two arsonists, facing federal time, testified about who paid them. Bank records traced the cash to Brenda's shell companies. Messages pulled from her laptop detailed plans to force property sales across 3 states. And when the prosecutor projected photos of Marcus's coop, the poison hens, the spray-painted workshop, the accelerant cans, even the jury shifted uncomfortably. Brenda Kensington's platinum hair was dull now, her perfect posture sagging under the weight of shackles. When the verdict came, guilty on 17 felony counts, including conspiracy and attempted arson, she didn't look at Marcus. She stared at the floor, as if the ground itself had betrayed her. Outside, microphones crowded forward. "Mr. Thorne, how does it feel to see justice served?" Marcus glanced at Elena and the twins before answering. "This was never about winning a fight," he said quietly. "It was about protecting our home and proving the law still matters, even when people try to twist it." The fallout rippled fast. Federal investigators uncovered a network of fraudulent HOA schemes Brenda had built with her business partners. Council members who'd signed off on illegal property acquisitions resigned or faced indictment. National media called it the Willowbrook conspiracy, but to Marcus, it was something simpler. His family's life put back together, piece by piece. 6 months later, the sound of hammers replaced the fear. Their new house rose from the same footprint as the old one, sunlight flashing off fresh lumber and solar panels. Elena planted herbs again along the porch. Dakota and River helped Marcus build a new chicken coop, locking the gate with something sturdier than before. Neighbors who'd once crossed the street now stopped to help paint the fence. The HOA dissolved itself, replaced by a voluntary neighborhood group that threw block parties instead of sending violation letters. People began waving again. The silence at the bus stop was gone. On the day they moved back in, Marcus planted an oak tree where the arsonist had poured gasoline, a living marker of defiance and renewal. Friends brought soil from their own gardens to mix into the hole, a gesture that turned rebuilding into a community ritual. As the roots took hold, so did something deeper: trust. Professional recognition followed, though Marcus never chased it. His case was cited in hearings about HOA abuse, in law school courses on property rights, even in federal reform proposals. Elena launched a scholarship in Dakota and River's names for students who showed civic courage. Jake's reporting won national awards, but he still came by on weekends for coffee, proudest of the fact that the story had changed lives. One evening, with the sun low and golden over the new wraparound porch, River asked a question that caught Marcus off guard. "Dad, were you ever scared?" Marcus looked at his son for a long moment. "Every single day," he admitted. "But fear's not a sign you're losing. It's a sign that what you're protecting matters." Dakota nudged her brother and grinned. "Told you he was a superhero. Just the really boring kind who carries a binder instead of cape." Elena laughed, and even Marcus did too, because maybe boring heroes were the ones who lasted. The oak tree rustled in the evening wind, its leaves already spreading wide. Marcus rested a hand on the railing, feeling the smooth grain of new wood under his palm, the hum of a home reclaimed. "You know," he said softly, almost to himself, "people think rules are chains, but the right rules, they're roots. They hold you steady when a storm comes." Elena slipped her arm through his, and when someone tries to rip them out, Marcus glanced at the tree, at the house, at his family gathered close. A small, quiet smile touched his face. "Then you plant them deeper.